Okay, guys, hopefully this broadcast will stick. Okay, so I need everybody in Capture One, please. And we're going to start from scratch. What I want to do is build a session here that's actually got multiple favorites. Then I want to get into naming those guys and actually shooting to them. So that's kind of what I want to start right now. We're going to get out of the library for a little bit, but we're going to come back to it because we're not finished here in the library. So I need everybody to go ahead and just start up Capture One. Has everybody sort of got things going? Okay, so first things first, we're going to build a brand new session here. So in order to do that, come up to the little plus. We're in the library. If you want your screen to look like mine, we actually should all do this. Let's all go to just simplified tethered capture workspace. So if you come up to the window, down to workspace, down to simplified tethered capture, then your screen will look like my screen. It gets rid of a couple of icons up here in the top, all stuff that we can put back if we choose to later. But this is, again, it'll get us all pretty much on the same page. It also puts your browser to the right side. And so that's just kind of their general setup. This is a good go-to place for if you're just going to start doing capture work, which is what we're going to do today. So to create a new session, you click on this little plus that's right next to the sessions right here. You'll get a drop-down menu, and you can do either a new session or a new catalog. I want you to pick new session. The other place that you can get to that is up here at the file menu down to new session. Either way, a session dialog will open up. And so for today, I want you to name it 201703. It's today the 4th. 04 underscore. I'm going to put in COL for Columbia, but you could put in your own name, whatever, just so that, again, it's kind of an identifier for who you're doing this for. And then I'm going to put C1 Pro. And we're going to leave it at that. So in terms of where to put this guy, again, in my case, I do have a shared partition. So you can look up at my screen and see this one now. See if I can get that layer off of that screen. Or make it worse. Okay. Perfect. At any rate, in my case, I do have a shared partition because I have multiple login accounts on this computer. So trying to find my shared. I knew I shouldn't do this on a new one. So anyway, we're going to put it in the pictures folder. That's where I'm going to put mine. That's where I want you guys to put yours. Again, the picture folder is a safe place to put this. You would not want to put this on your desktop. And you would not want to shoot this to an external hard drive either. Both of those are far too slow to have speedy capture, which is exactly what we want going on here. And we talked about this before. The option here to open this in a new window is slightly dangerous. You probably don't want to do that either. The issue is that if you have a window that is open and your camera is connected to that window, to that session, and you open a new session with a new window without closing the original one, your camera will stay connected to the original one. You will not be able to connect to your new one, and you will only get frustrated because you'll not understand what it is that's really actually going on. So this is ready for me to go right now. I'm going to go ahead and say OK to this. Now, in terms of actually doing session favorites, that's what we're going to add next to this. It actually is over here in the library. It's right sort of down in the middle of the page. You'll see you have session folders, capture, selects, outputs, trash. Then you've got session albums, 5 stars and all images. Those are default ones that you get. The next one down is session favorites. That's what I want to build right now. What these really should be called is not favorites. This should be called session subfolders. They actually should be called capture subfolders. That's what they are. Although you can do other things here. It's what everybody in the world uses these things for, so that's what we're going to do. So if you click on the plus sign right here to get one, to start one, It'll open up a folder for, it'll open up a dialog window for you. You need to then, you should be able to get to the pictures folder. You should be able to get to your session folder, the one that I just created. And inside that session folder, you should be able to select your capture folder. So if you're lost, look up at my screen and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about here. You'll also see the problem that I have, and it's this guy right here. If you look down at the very bottom of my screen right here, you will see that this is where you can assign ownership privileges to the folder that we're getting ready to create. And you see this right down here where I can read and write to mine, but the group and everybody else is set to read only. These are permission issues that you run into over and over and over again. If you shoot to a shared partition, this does not come up. You don't get these. In a shared partition to the partition on your computer that is shared, that version of it, you do not run into these issues at all. But anyway, in our case, it doesn't matter right now because you are the only people that are going to be working with this session. But just to know that this is part of the problem in actually shooting to these. You can change these permissions so that everybody is read-write. That's probably what I would do at this stage of the game just to avoid anything that we're going to run into down the line. So with the capture folder actually selected, you click on this new folder button and a dialog box will come up and we're just going to type in shot 1. And do shot 01, don't just do 1. If that looks ugly to you, and that actually does look ugly to me, I'm actually going to put an underscore in between those two. Underscores are a very smart thing to do in all your naming convention folders, that kind of stuff. Because Unix servers, I've talked to you guys about some of this, I'm sure, but where most people actually store really huge, for instance, Amazon. All the servers that Amazon works with are Unix servers. Netflix is the same way. All the really big companies that host websites, all that kind of stuff, they all run on Unix servers. Unix servers do not like blank spaces. As a matter of fact, they will reject files and folders if they do have blank spaces in them. And that's why this underscore is so popular and why so many people use it. So at any rate, to do that, and simply hit create, and you will see that you now should have inside your capture folder a folder that is called shot 1, and you can click on the add button, and you will see that in your session favorites there is right next to it, there's a little heart with a folder that says shot 1. So that's one way to go about doing these. It is not the fastest way to go about doing these. A much faster way to do it would be this. If you go to your Finder right now, you need to navigate to that capture folder. As a matter of fact, let's not. Go back into Capture One. I'm going to show you a quicker way to get to it. So a quicker way to get to your capture folder right now, because we have not designated anything different, is in Capture One. If you hover over the capture folder, you will get, it'll show you a drop-down menu that'll actually, not a drop-down menu, it'll show you sort of like a flyout that shows you where your capture folder really is. However, if you hold down the Control key and click on capture folder, you will get a drop-down menu. And in this drop-down menu, you can come down to Show in Finder. And if you do that, it takes you right to your capture folder immediately. So it's just a faster way of getting there, even though you probably know where it is. It's just a faster way to get there. So inside your capture folder right now, I am going to click on my very first one just to make it active. I'm going to hit the return key, which just allows me to select the name, and then I'm going to copy that name, Command-C, or go up to the edit menu and come down to copy. All I'm doing is copying the word shot_01 onto the clipboard. Click outside of that to make it no longer active, but still inside this capture folder. Hold down the Shift key and the Command key and hit the letter N. That will give you a new folder. Hit Command-V to paste, and you put in that thing that says shot01. Hit the Delete key once to get rid of the 1, and hit a 2 in there and click outside. We've just created a folder for shot 2. Do the same thing again. Shift Command-N will give us another untitled. Command-V will paste in. Backspace to get rid of the 1. Add a 3. We're going to do this one more time. Shift Command-N to get a untitled folder. Command-V to paste. Backspace 1, hit the letter 4. So now we have got shot 1, 2, 3, 4. We've got those folders are in here. You've already got shot 1, and hopefully you'll still be able to see your Capture One folder. You can see that shot 1 is already a session favorite. If you select shot 1, shot 2 folder now. Hold down the shift key and click on shot 4. It will select all 3 of those folders. You can also hold down the command key to select a discontinuous number of folders. So for instance, if shot 3 had already been added, holding down the command key would allow you to select shot 2 and shot 4 with that. But anyway, select the 3 of those guys and drag them from the Finder window on top of your session favorites and let go. And you will see that it's added shot 2, 3, and 4 to this guy as well. Shot 1 is actually on the bottom of mine. You can reorder these guys. You can drag them up and down, whatever. We're actually good to go here. Makes sense. We good? Okay, before we actually do any of this work, though, we actually need to talk about naming in Capture One. So I want you to go ahead and click on the camera icon. This is where capture naming occurs. Now, you can put these folders, you can put these tools anywhere you want to, but this is the default. This is where things would actually be by default. So if you click on the little camera icon, you should see down somewhere under exposure evaluation a small tool called Next Capture Naming. That's the guy that we want to deal with right now. And you can see in my Next Capture Naming, I've got in the format, and this is also by default. This is the way, and nobody knows why Capture One insists on doing this, because nobody uses this convention. But nonetheless, it's actually got name, and the name here is the name that's sitting right in this label dialog box called name. By default, Capture One picks up the session name that you've named, and that's what it puts in as the name. And I'm fine with that part of it. What I'm not fine with is this capture counterpart. So to modify the format, you click on this little box. It's got the 3 little dots in it right next to that file format name, and a dialog box will actually open up. And these things that you see, all right, well, it's labeled right here. They're actually called tokens. And as you scroll down here, you'll see that there's this sort of like endless number of different tokens that you can actually put into this guy. So what I'm going to do is we're going to actually modify this guy. The thing about camera counter, what camera counter really is the number of times your shutter has been fired. So if you have a camera that has only had its shutter fired once, this camera counter would start your camera, your capture naming at 2. If you had a camera that had been shot 19,000 times, this would actually start at the number 19,000. Who starts their capture? Who would start a session of any brand new thing with the number 19,500? What, you get where this is going, right? So anyway, that's why nobody uses this thing right here. There are a set of presets. If you look at the presets right here, again, nobody really knows why camera and name and capture camera counter are the first ones. Nobody would use this. What some people will do is they would come down and they would use name and a 3-digit counter. And if you do that and say okay, you'll see that it changes over here, and you will also get this preview over here. You can see exactly what's going on. So remember, I had the name of my session was the 20170304 underscore COL underscore C1 Pro, and then it starts this 002, which is also a mistake, because again, I would want mine to start at 1. To change this, because the counters in Capture One are sticky, to change this, you actually come up to the little 3 dots that are up by the name, and you click on that, and in this drop-down menu, you have a place to reset your capture counter. Every single time we change a folder, we need to reset that. However, this is still not the exact naming convention that I want in mind. To get to the naming convention that I like, again, click on that fly out menu. I am going to get rid of the 3-digit counter first, simply by clicking and getting rid of it. I am going to put in an underscore right now. You can type directly into this format, so I am going to add an underscore right now. And then I'm going to scroll down in the tokens, and one of the options that you have down in the token is destination folder name. If you click on destination folder name and then drag this up and let go, what's going to happen now is, because I'm going to use those folders that were labeled shot 1, 2, 3, and 4, I'm going to have the name of my session actually as the parent. Then I'm going to have the shot folder that I'm going into would be the child. And then finally, I'm going to add another underscore right here. And I'm going to scroll up to the top and grab the digit counter. The digit counter, unfortunately, is not alphabetized in the D's, which is where you would expect it. It's just at the very top. And if you grab on that token digit counter and drag it up into place and let go, you will see that it is a 1-digit counter. If you click on its drop down, though, you can change that to a 3-digit counter. This is how almost everybody in the world that I know that shoots in Capture One, this is what they do. Since this took an enormous amount of work for you to figure out, you can save this as a preset. So to save it as a preset, you would click on the untitled at the very top and come down and do Save User Preset. And I would call this, again, a lot of people will name this stuff after themselves. I'm just going to call this name underscore destination 3-digit counter, or just 3-digit, and go ahead and save this. Now this gets saved to that application support folder along with anything else that you do in there. So you remember if you develop your own custom workspace, that gets saved to the application support folder. Any of the recipes that we're going to use once we actually get into developing will also be saved there. So once we go ahead and say okay to this, if you go out to the Finder, if you do not see library right here, do you guys have library in your favorites? Yep or no? Nope. All right, so to get to the library, come up to the Go menu, select Go, hold down the Option key, and the library will show itself. Scroll down to Library and let go. It will now take you into the library. Every time you want to get to the library, you can do that. If you are tired of doing that, especially on your own machines, you can simply grab the library icon that's at the top of that window, drag it into your favorites, and library will sit there forevermore. And then you can simply click on the library. But nonetheless, get to the library, come into Application Support. In Application Support, click on Capture One. Inside Capture One, you will see this is where all your presets live. So for instance, if we look at, this looks like, possibly my older versions of this. Let me see if there is a phase support now. Well, that thing that we just saved, that preset for our naming, should be sitting in here, but damned if I see it. Do you guys have this folder in yours at all? Not at search presets, no, just any of this presets in here. We'll see. Say what? Yeah, okay. Well, I will find out what that's all about, because that's that's where they should be. And it's weird because this is where I've saved all of my version 8 recipes, but it doesn't look like that version 9 is calling to that. So anyway, I'll figure that one out. So at any rate, that's where they should be. So if you now look down here at what's going on here, you actually have got a sample that's right here. And here it's actually got the word capture in here. And the reason it has that word capture in here is because my capture folder is still designated as the capture folder that was created in that session, right? That's not what I want to have happen. So if you go back, well, I mean, it is what I want to have happen. But now if you go back into the library, instead of using this capture folder as your capture session, it becomes more the parent. And these shot 1, 2, 3, and 4 become your true capture folders. To designate shot 1 as your capture folder, you hold down the control key and you click on shot 1 and you come down and you do set as capture folder. And when you do that, it's going to ask you, do you want to remember your previous capture folder as a favorite? All that's going to do is actually take the capture folder that we originally created in the session and make it a favorite. There is no reason to do that, so I'm going to say no. You will now notice that there is a little camera icon that sits right next to this shot 01. And also, if you go back into your camera folder and you look at your camera naming, you will actually see that that is also in your folder right now. So now you've got sort of the perfect way to actually have this and organize this and work with this and shoot this. You will also notice that the frame counter is sitting there 001, which is exactly what we want to have happen. So if you've gotten this far, I need you now to plug in your camera. We are actually going to make a couple of exposures just so that we can go through this whole process. So what? No. I actually might have one here, Sarah. Just use mine. Let me go through this first part, and then I'll give you this guy right here. Okay? I don't think I've got. I may have another one in here. Actually, I think I do have another one in here. No, Sarah, I don't. But like I said, I'll give you mine as soon as I get through this part here really quick. Okay, so the first time you turn this on, if you'll see actually what's happened right here, there's this thing that's come on. This thing right here, this is not a part of Capture One. This is actually a part of Photos in the Apple software. I'm going to go into Photos in just 1 second and show you what's going on here. Here it actually comes up though back in Capture One and it says you've attached new hardware. Do you want to register this? Most people would register this part. It just it will help in your troubleshooting part. So most people would say yes to this. But you don't have to. You can simply click on no thanks, whatever. And then it says here that this camera could not be attached. And I'm going back into it looks like Photos again. So I'm going to check where Photos is in all of this. All right, I'm going to click never for that device. That's what I'm going to do. And then troubleshooting 101, camera that doesn't seem to be attached. So I just turned my camera off and I'm going to turn it back on right now and see if that solves the problem, and it does. However, I need everybody to do this as well with me because, again, tethering problems are one of the biggest problems that you can have in shooting. So this is just something everybody in this room should know, and it's just something that as a digital, you may want to consider putting one of these in your kit wherever you go. 99% of the problems with tethered capture connection is power. So in this case, we've got a battery in this camera and we've got a USB cable. That's how these two are connecting. However, sometimes the power in the USB cable is not sufficient. That's where the power issue comes into this. So what some people will do is they will actually buy an independent powered USB hub. You can get really small ones, but the advantage of a USB hub is that a powered one, not just a regular hub, but a powered one is there's actually a power source for the hub. You plug the hub into a wall, and then there's a USB cord that comes from your computer to the hub, and then there's another cord that goes from your hub to your camera, and the hub itself supplies additional power to that whole USB chain. And you cannot believe the number of problems that it actually solves. So I think we have talked about this before. If you're going to go down this road, because this applies specifically to FireWire as well. FireWire is a little less wonky, but not quite, but it's still wonky. If you go online really quick, I need everybody to go online with me right now. You're going to go to a company called MacSales or to a site called MacSales, MacSales. This is Other World Computing. They're actually here in Illinois, which is unfortunate only because you don't get tax-free stuff from them. But if you type in Thunderbolt Hub, that's what I want you to type in, Hunderder. There's the original one right here. It's this OWC 12-port Thunderbolt hub. If you click on this guy, this is the one that is currently shipping and in line. And if you click on the back to actually see the ports that are on this guy, it's this right here. You will see there are 3 USB 3 hubs right here. There is audio in and out right here. This is FireWire 800 right here, Ethernet, and then you have 2 Thunderbolt hubs here. Then you've got HDMI connection right here. And this is the almighty one right here. This is where you plug in a power brick that goes into a wall, which supplies power, additional power to all of these connections. There's also 2 other USB ports that are on the side of this guy. So it's got quite a bit. It's not the smallest thing in the world, I'll be honest with you. It's probably about like this size, like this, and about this thick. But this is the one that everybody uses. There is a new one that is due to come out, and it's this one right here. So you may want to put this purchase off. This has not been made available yet. The difference in this is it actually has it's got the Thunderbolt ports here have been updated, and I think, don't quote me on this one, I think that this has also got USB-C ports on it. I think they're one and the same. So nonetheless, this would be one of your answers to do that. However, in troubleshooting, again, one of the things that people will do is when they first look at these cameras, they don't know if it is communicating or not. So I need everybody to do this as well. Come up to your Apple menu, down to System Preferences. Not System Preferences, down to About This Mac. And a screen will open up that will allow you to generate a system report. If you click on that system report, it will actually bring up this next dialog, and you want to click on USB. And when you click on USB, this will show you everything that is connected to your computer. And you can see, in my case right here, that I have got a Canon digital camera that is connected to my computer. So if phase 1 could not see, if Capture One could not see this, and I was wondering, is this my camera? Is this the USB cable? Whatever. This is how you find out if the camera or the cable is the culprit right here. Again, it's up to the Apple menu, to About This Mac, to doing your system report, to looking at USB. The computer clearly can see the camera right now, so the problem is not my camera, and the problem is not my USB cable. As a matter of fact, if I pull this out, close this up again, and then reopen this, it's still showing this Canon camera attached, which is interesting. Let me see if I just restart the whole thing, if it still does see that. And again, click on USB, and you'll see there's no Canon camera attached. So it's just another quick troubleshoot. This is the first place everybody goes to actually make sure, because now you know that they are connected. However, I'm in luck because it's actually connected right here. Who shoots at 20,000 ISO anyway? Okay. How noisy are those pictures? Not too bad. All right. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and set mine up. What do you think the exposure in this room is? Didn't we talk about this last week? Yeah, what did I get it last week? I had 1,000 ISO. I'm going to try it at a 30th of a second at f4, and I'm going to take a picture of the whiteboard and see what I get. Say what? No, right? All right. Who doesn't shoot with autofocus? Yeah, I'm so confused, right? And I get an image that's actually come in like this. How underexposed is this image, would you guys guess? I have a not bad. I have a, anybody else? Stopper 2. What does a stopper 2 mean? Didn't we go through linear logarithmic capture in this class? Yeah. Mm-hmm. What's one stop underexposed to mean to your data? Half of it's gone. What's 2 stops underexposed? No, not twice that, but yeah, because then it would be all your data, right? Well, first is one. No, every single stop is half of what remains. So the first one would be half of your data. The next one is half again. So that'd be 3/4 of your data. How can I tell what exposure I should really have here? I don't have my little white patch in here. I don't have any of that stuff in here. But I want to, again, when you think about exposure now, you cannot be thinking about what do you want your image to look at. You need to be thinking about data collection, right? So what does that actually mean? That means driving this exposure just to the point where it starts to clip the information in my image, right? Right, so this is the easiest way to figure it out. What I'm gonna do is I'm going to come up to Capture One and come down. I need everybody to do this with me, to come down to Preferences. I'm gonna click on Preferences. I'm gonna then click on Exposure and check to see where my exposure stuff is actually set. By default, it comes with a highlight warning. It's set, that's enabled at 250. Your shadow warning is not enabled. I think that's a problem. So I'm going to click on to enable the shadow warning, and then I'm going to boost that shadow warning up closer to like a 15. Because that's really more where you want that warning to be. Again, this is shadow detail is what we're talking about here, and I need to see a warning about detail. Once I bring it up to a 15, I will actually be able to see a 15 on my computer screen. I will not be able to print that out to an inkjet printer. What would my shadow destination be for an inkjet printer? My shadow detail. A number. Somewhere in the 25, somewhere close to that. But I'm going to set it for 15 because I can raise that value in software if I need to. And this 15 will be actually good enough, or probably better for my computer screen. So I'm going to go ahead and say OK to that and close it up. And then finally, I'm actually going to simply come over, not to my exposure evaluation. I'm going to come over to the thing that looks like, it looks like a, well, is it supposed to, I don't know what that's supposed to, it's supposed to look like a histogram is what it is supposed to look like. This is just a quick way people will do this. People do this all the time to try to decide how much, especially if we're in the studio and we're working with strobe, you're trying to figure out how much you need to raise this value really quickly, because you can see this is well underexposed. So just to get a guess, this is not going to be exact, but this will get you in the ballpark. If you turn your exposure highlight warning on, it's the little triangle thing up at the top with a little exclamation point in it. And then grab your exposure slider and start to pump it up. You want to drag this up to the point where you start to flag red, where you actually start to see a red actually introducing into here. And I can see that actually the type on my screen is beginning to hit that point right here at roughly 3.5 stops. So then I'm going to double click on that to get rid of the exposure slider. And this is the biggie. People do this all the time, just trying to figure out how much additional exposure they want. But then if you do not return this exposure back to 0 and you change your exposure on your camera, you're going to get a double hit of this stuff. So just make sure, all I was trying to do is get some idea about how much more exposure that I really need on this. So back to my camera, if I need to get 3.5 stops more, how can I do that? Well, I can look at my aperture right now, and my aperture is maxed out. This is an f4 lens, so I can't open up any more. So what else can I do? I can do shutter speed, and if I was going to change my shutter speed 3.5 stops, what would that shutter speed be? Do I need more light or less light? Does that mean my shutter speeds go in which direction? Am I heading to a 60th or a 15th? Okay, and what's a 15th? How many stops? 1 stop, because I'm doubling my time, right? Okay, so what's my next one? If I double it again, what would my aperture be? My shutter speed. I went from a 30th to a 15th is 1 stop. What's 2 stop? What's 3 stops? 4. 1/4 of a second. What's 5 stops? 4 stops. All right, so here, I went from a 30th to a 15th. That's +1 to an 8th. That's +2 to a 1/4. That's +3. Then I need a 1/2 stop more. Can I do that in shutter speeds? It's difficult to do. It's not impossible, but it's difficult. So let's do it in ISOs instead. I need a 1/2 stop more ISO. I'm at 1000. How do I get a 1/2 stop more ISO? Say what? 1500. Why? A half of what? Stop. I want a half a stop, but where'd the 1500 come from? Because of full stop is 2000. Exactly. It's the best way to figure it out. So one full stop of this would be 2000. So a half is going to be right in the middle at ISO 1500. What if I needed a third instead of a half? Why? Exactly. You think about this. If you need to get into those in-betweens, the halves of the others, whatever, first do a full stop. So what's a full stop more light? If I'm at 1,000, what's one full stop more? 2,000. I just double that, right? So that gives me the range. This range now in between here is one full stop. So if I need a third of a stop, I simply come in here to that 1/3 of what that would actually be. So 3 into 1,000 is basically 333. So 1,333 would actually be plus 1/3 off of this 1,000. 1 over 666 would actually be 2/3 of a stop more. Does that make sense? Are we good on that? All right. It's just the easiest way to figure it. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to set my camera to 1/1500th. If it'll give it to me, I'll do it as 1/1600th, which is really 2/3 of a stop. And I will take my shutter speed to 1/4 of a second. Isn't that what I said I wanted to do? That's going to be blurry. And I'm actually pretty close. The only thing that's my highlight warning here that actually is blowing out is the type that's actually sitting on here. So you guys might look at this and say, well, Jesus, Versa, that just looks way blown out to me, whatever. But the truth of the matter is you are still thinking in terms of exposure, and you cannot do that anymore. It's a digital world out there. You need to think about data collection. This is a rich data set that if I then choose to, I can process down and make it look really dark. But I'm doing that with a really rich set of data. Make sense? Okay, so I need everybody, so I'm going to give you I need everybody to fire off a half a dozen frames. I don't care what you take a picture of. Oh, here, this guy's pretty quick. Well, maybe you can change it if you want to. I just need you to have several captures actually going on. And what I want you to be also looking at is the very bottom of your screen right here. As a digital tech, your eyeballs should be riveted to this shit right down here. This ISO 1600, this 1/4 of a second right here, f4, whatever the lens length is, all of those issues become really critical to you, because if you're working with a photographer and they don't realize that they've hit the aperture button by mistake and you don't pick it up, you would pick it up, you would see it right here, or you would see it on the camera that it's actually connected to this. It's your job as a digital tech to keep your eye on this, so that if there is a mistake that's made or there was a change that's made and and the photographer is not aware of it, you can spot it and you could call out and say, you know, Versa, this is now you're at 1/8 of a second right here. Is that where you want to be? Are you sure you want to be there? Whatever, blah, 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 blah. So that's what's actually going on here. Make sense? Okay, and you should also see that your numbering system is actually intact and it's actually working. So again, I've got 2 frames in here. The first one was labeled shot 1. The next one was labeled shot 2. So blah, 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 blah. You've shot your files for this part of it. Now it's time to go on to our shot number 2, the next one. And the reason I'm trying to go through all of this with you is in the next folder to actually make this shot 02, our new one. Again, you hold down the control key, you click on shot 2, you come down and you say, set this as my capture folder now. And again, you will see that the little camera goes right to that. What some people get into the habit of doing, and it's not a bad habit to get into, remember, this session set of folders up here, these are aliases to the things that you have designated as your folders. Now, it appears to most people that these are the session folders that were originally created. However, that's no longer the case for the capture folder. This alias for the capture folder now is pointing towards shot 2, because shot 2 has been designated as my capture folder. And to check to make sure that this really is happening, if you hold down the control key again and you click on capture folder and say show in Finder, you will be taken to shot 2. This is just a quick check so that you know indeed this is correct. But again, it's important that you realize that these aliases right here, initially they did point to this capture folder that was in the session. But when I changed the designation of what the capture folder was, this no longer represents this folder. This thing in Capture One is an alias representing whatever has been designated as the shot folder. And the same thing will hold true for selects, outputs, all of those others. These are strictly aliases that point to those. So what I'm trying to say is that these folders right here originally were these. These pointed to these guys. But the minute you start redesignating, these things point to whatever has been designated as the capture folder. So this capture folder right here is no longer the capture folder itself here. It is this shot02 right here because I designated shot02 as my capture folder. Are we good on that one? Yes.
I tried both cameras, turning them off on, it's showing the system report.
Okay, then let's just try to turn this on and
Yeah, I
off
did that
and
with
back
both
on.
of them.
Huh, well then come over here and do this on mine. Over here, just unplug it in the back. All right, perfect. Have a seat.
Thanks.
I'll just direct this with you. Okay, so before Sarah shoots any more pictures here, so this is the thing that will also bite you in the ass doing that, and this is why I want to go through this whole part right here. If you go back to our capture naming, so go back to the camera folder. I'll let you do this, actually. Look at what's happened in your capture naming right now. You would think that everything is actually perfect, and it is. It's got the session name, it picked up that shot02 is now where we're going. But look at your capture counter. Your capture counter is now set. Again, the capture counter that happens within the session is sticky. So even though it knows it's going into shot02, it does not know that you do not, you need to tell Capture One to reset that counter again. So to do it, exactly right, Sarah. Just come up to the little 3 dots at the top, come down to reset capture counter, and let go, and it sets us back to 1 again. And then bang out another 6 pictures. All right, and then now that you've got that done, I want everybody to go back into the library. And I want you to designate shot number 3 as our capture folder. So again, hold down the control key, because right now, Sarah, we're still at number 2. Number 2 is that exactly. And do set as capture folder. Then go back into the camera. And you will notice that, again, this is now going to start at frame 4. You don't want to do that. You want to reset the capture counter again. And now go ahead and bang out another 6 frames. And then finally, we are going to do this one last time. Go back to the library, come down and designate shot number 4 as our capture folder. And go back into the camera and reset the capture counter. And knock out your last 3 or 4 shots. So is this working for everybody? This is just the habit that you get into, but again, the resetting the capture counter part is the thing that screws everybody up. Well, there's a lot of things that screws everybody up, so we're avoiding as many of those possible screw-ups as we actually can right here. And Sarah just lost her connection, which makes me believe it's that guy. So again, turn your camera off, Sarah, and then turn it back on again. All right, and then let's do this. I need everybody to take a picture of the ceiling. And then what I need everybody to do is figure out what our perfect exposure on this ceiling should actually be. Can you do that? So again, what I would do is exactly what Sarah just did. She just enabled the warning up here that I already know is set at 250. She's going to grab the exposure slider and start to drag it up. And she's starting to clip right about here. This might possibly be spectral highlight, but it's looking like, again, Sarah, either one of us hit that exposure slider or not. All the exposures that we have been doing here in the back were actually set at a -3. So this exposure now is actually set at a -0.8. That's basically a -2/3 to get the proper exposure. So just double click on that little button, that little radio button right now. It'll zero that out. So Sarah, we need to lose 1/3 of a stop on ours. So how are we going to do that?
I would say the shutter speed.
You could do that
Or
or just
the
stop your
ISO.
aperture down. It's probably the easiest. Just take it down 1/3 of the stop. So try 4.5. And fire up another frame of the wireless guy. Yeah, and I'd say that's probably right. Again, these are lights that are actually on that are probably burning. That's okay. I mean, we might try to go down another third, but I would say that that part's actually probably somewhat correct. Did everybody get a decent exposure? Did we go through all of that? So again, you're looking, go ahead and put on your warning. Okay, so, and check your exposure. So you want to start cranking that exposure up so you start seeing red. Keep going. Keep going. There you go. That's now starting to clip. So in your case, it's telling you you need to add 2.5 stops exposure to this. So then double click on that little guy to zero it out again. Open up your camera, 2.5 stops. Yeah, perfect. You guys good over here? Is this making sense where we're going with this? Again, what we're trying to do is drive this exposure as hard as we can to collect the maximum amount of data. This is not about processing. Can work over here for you guys? Okay,
How much
good.
highlight fire or highlight line?
How much? Again, I would say that, you know, I think you're probably close here. You could stop down 1/3 more and see what you actually got. So try, yeah, I mean, you could go to an 800 or go to 4.3, either way. Yeah, that's probably where it should actually be. Okay, are we good on this, guys? All right, so with that being said, Sarah, you can jump back over there because we're done with cameras. As a digital tech, what's the first thing you do in the morning when you walk in the studio? Yes, charge all the batteries. Number one.
Like at my house, I've got batteries charging at all times.
Okay, so with that all said, have you guys had a chance to copy over that session that I asked you to copy over? If you can find that session in the Finder, there is a way to actually launch that session on its own. To do that, let me see where mine is. Hang on, I don't have mine on mine yet, so give me 1 second. Okay, so if you look at that session, if you simply click on it once and look inside of it, again, I'm looking for, it should be the underscore bond underscore fashion underscore rebuild. You'll notice that there's actually three folders. I mean, these are actually preference files that are actually sitting at the very top. There is a capture folder, an output folder, a selects folder, a trash folder. All of those guys exist. This guy up here is actually, there's three different these are preferences for the session itself. The reason there's three different ones in here is that this has gone through 3 iterations of Capture One. It probably started in version 7. That would be the first of the backups. Then it went to version 8, which would be the next of the backups, and now in version 9. You can sort of tell which the live one is because it's the one with the complete icon in it. If you double click on that, it is the best and easiest way to actually launch a session. You can come up to the file menu and come down to open. You can do other things, but just double clicking on the profile is usually the easiest way to do that. What you will also should notice is I'm still in my camera counter right now. You will also notice that in my camera tool tab. You'll also notice that in here in the name, the actual naming convention that I had set up for this actually exists inside this guy right now. The session preference that we are looking at remembers everything about your session. It remembers the naming that you had set up. It remembers which is your capture folder and which is not. So for instance, if you come into the library right now and you click on this guy, you will notice that the capture folder right here is designated as my capture folder. There's also an SKU number in here that's a 678 with a warning signal next to it. It is because that, even though that is a session favorite, this folder does not exist anywhere on this computer that I'm using right now, and it doesn't exist on yours either. So if you want to get rid of this SKU guy, we can. You simply click on it to make it active, and then you hit the negative button, and that guy will actually go away. Now, in our case, the capture folder actually is the real capture folder, the original one that was built in the session. I do not have any session favorites going on in this guy right now. The reason this capture is actually here is, again, when we had added that session and designated a different capture folder, it said, do you want to add capture to this? And I went ahead and said okay in that instance. But in our case, so that's what's actually going on here. You'll notice that the capture folder doesn't have any subfolders in it. While we're there, do me a favor, just to get there really quick, hold down the control key, click on the capture folder and say, show this to me in the Finder. And you will actually see it. We should do a quick tour of what's going on here in the Finder. There is a number of different file formats in here because I've actually imported stuff in here. I've shot stuff. These IIQ files are all phase 1 P45. I actually shot these. This very top one here, CR2, is a Canon file. There is a bunch of other stuff in here. This .tif, capital TIF, is also a phase designation. So it's not incorrect. This is not a processed file. This actually is a raw file. In phase, if you go back into phase 1 really quickly, go up to the capture one down to preferences. In preferences, if you click on image, you will see
It's under capture for the purposes for the extension.
Yeah,
it's under capture.
Sorry, click on the camera. It's this little guy right here. Now, in the extension, in this drop-down, you can see that you can set it at IIQ or TIF. IIQ would be the preferred one right now, just to keep it distinguished from a TIFF, although the TIFF extension is not incorrect. While we're here in the capture preference as well, it's worth noting that you have at the bottom these providers. This is Capture One 9 is designed to support all of these cameras right now. Troubleshooting point number 2, and the place to go look, is if you connect a camera and it does not tether, your first trip after seeing that it is connecting to your computer, your second trip is to this dialog preference right here. because people will uncheck these. So for instance, if the Canon is unchecked right here, it does not matter what you go through, your Canon camera will not connect to Capture One. And the reason people do it is this, is every single one of these different cameras actually has a unique spin on USB that it uses to connect. Think of it as like flavors of ice cream. They're all ice cream, but they're all slightly different taste. And so if you have trouble getting your computer to connect to your camera, one of the possibilities that you've got would be to go in here and turn everything off except for your camera. Because what that does is it eliminates USB language conflicts. So if you were only shooting a Canon camera and you were having problems tethering, you could conceivably come in and turn off Sony, Nikon, Leaf, and Phase One. Just leave on the Canon, and it might help. It may not, but it might. However, if you're the nasty kind of person that then says, well, I'm going to fuck the next digital tech who comes into this class up, and you leave it turned off, then somebody comes in and they plugs in their Nikon, but support for Nikon has been turned off in this preference file. The Nikon will never connect no matter what they do unless they're smart enough to know this and come and check this part. So it's just a place to understand that this exists and to go here and check that part out. Okay. So with that being said, here in our new space, our new session that we've actually got in here, yeah, I've got a couple of flagged images in here and whatnot, so we'll actually take a look at these guys. So what I want to talk about next is ratings in this. Oh, I'm sorry, let me go back out to the folder really quick. I'm going to go out to the capture folder with you guys just to point out a couple of other things that are going on out here. So in most cases, you guys are familiar with sidecar files, right? What is a sidecar file? Exactly. It's basically where if you bring a RAW file into Camera Raw, for instance, or you bring it into Lightroom and you actually do some processing on it, you develop it some way, you change its exposure, you change its white balance, you do anything to it, whatever. A RAW file in and of itself can never be modified by law. You cannot go in and edit the raw data. You can process the raw data, but you cannot edit the raw data. The only thing that you can do to actually change, the only thing that allows you to write a raw file is the actual exposure in your camera. So what controls the exposure in your camera? You. But what elements? What things do control exposure in a camera? ISO is 1. What else? Shutter speed is 2. What else? Aperture is 3. Those 3 things are the only 3 things that you can actually do to impact a RAW file. There's one last one that you can do because a RAW file does not understand color. So a RAW file does not have color in it. You need to tell the RAW file what color it should be. That's why we go through building camera profiles. That's what camera profiles, when you set up a camera profile here in Capture One, when you set those things, those profiles are telling Capture One or Camera Raw, whatever you're in, this is the color that it should be. Now, it's not necessarily white balance color, but it will be color itself. The RAW file without that profile does not know that information. It basically, I've showed you guys in this class before, an unprocessed, undemosaicked file, whatever, is dominantly green because there's more green, there's twice the number of green pixels in there as there are red and blue. So color is the last thing that you can actually impact on a RAW file. And when I mean color, what I actually mean is conflict of color. If you have got one single color light source that is impacting your RAW file, it doesn't matter because the RAW file does not understand color. So you're going to set the color later anyway. You're going to say, this is what my white balance is because you were smart enough to use that little white color, our target, right? However, conflicting light sources are a different story. So if you have got, for instance, if we were to watch your eyes, turn on this light right here. Let's turn on these lights over here. If I was to turn on this light right here, and I was to open up this window right here, I've got a tungsten light that's hitting this white wall right here, and I've got daylight that's sitting on the outside out there. Are those the same color? No. So the problem with that is that the daylight outside is probably 6,500 degrees Kelvin or a little bit cooler now, depending on what's going on in the sky. But that'll be actually close because this is north-facing light. The color on the wall right here is probably closer to 3,400 degrees Kelvin, 3,200 degrees Kelvin, something like that. If I take a picture that has got both of these light sources in them, even though my raw file does not understand color, it does understand the relationship between these two. It knows that they are separate or that they're different, and that difference will remain in that file. So I could color balance for the tungsten wall and neutralize it. It would neutralize it by adding blue, which would make my blue sky outside even, or my blue, light outside even bluer. Or I could color neutralize the blue outside, which would be adding warmth to my image, which would then make what is already this warm tungsten light even warmer. So that imbalance, as it were, whatever, is built into your raw file. Those are the only 4 things that you can do to impact a raw file. Once that raw file is made, you cannot go in and edit it. There's no editor that I know of, legal or illegal, that will allow you to go in and change that file. The only thing that you can do to it is throw it away. You can process it. That is a completely different story, but you cannot rewrite that raw data. Make sense? So that being said, that's why XMP files exist. XMP files exist because anything in processing instructions that you would like to do have to be kept separate from the file. You cannot put those two together. It doesn't work like that. In Capture One, well, in typical world, in a Nikon world and in a Canon world, those XMP files are kept right next to the file that you're actually doing this work on. That is not how Capture One does it. In Capture One, if you look inside your Capture folder, you will see a Capture One folder. If you click on that guy, you will see that there are actually 2 other folders that exist in here. If you click on the cache one, you will see that there's a thing called proxies. If you click on proxies, these are actually your XMP files, and there's 2 of them for every image. There's a COP file and a COF file. If you click on thumbnails, you will actually see that these are the COP files. These are actually the previews that are generated for Capture One. So what I'm sort of trying to tell you is that in this case, you've actually got 3 files that are making up what you really see going on in Capture One. This whole system actually is extremely fast. It's really good. This is one of the reasons that Capture One works so fast. Is specifically these thumbnail previews right here. Capture One relies very heavily on showing you previews or developing files, only the smallest part of the file that you actually need. Unlike Lightroom, when you shoot tethered in Lightroom, it actually renders the entire file for its preview when it first comes in, which takes forever. That's why it's so slow. So these things are critical. However, you can throw these things away. Capture One will rebuild the previews. If you throw away the proxies, if you throw away the settings part, whatever, those really have more to do with any of the developing. So those have things to do with like setting the white balance in Capture One, all of that kind of stuff. If you pitch those, you haven't lost your raw file. You won't corrupt your raw file. You'll simply have to go back in and reset that kind of stuff. So you'd have to go back in and re-white balance. And if you were doing exposure setting changes, whatever, all of that stuff, you would have to go back and actually do again. But just so that you know, that's where these guys are. And the reason I bring all of this up is this is the preview, all the XMP data stuff right here. These are your raw files right here. But this guy right here at the very top, this session preference sitting right up here is how Capture One is actually set up when you are doing all of this work. So if you need to send a session to someone else, you have to copy the entire parent, this entire parent folder, because what it needs is not just the captures, it needs this, specifically this session guide. That's the most important one, because that will actually show if you've done any sort of session favorites, if you've done any of those subfolders, any of that kind of stuff. We are going to get into sorting here and smart albums and all that kind of stuff. All of that information is kept in this preference file right here. So if you send somebody the whole ball of wax, they get everything. And when they launch Capture One, their Capture One will look exactly like yours. If all you send them are these raw files, then they start from scratch. They have no ratings, they have no layout, they have no session favorites, they have no criteria, search criteria, smart albums won't exist. All of that stuff will actually go away. Does that make sense? Okay, so back into Capture One. If you click on your Capture folder, oh, I've got a filter on, sorry. On our Capture folder, if you simply click on the very first image at the top, you'll see that it has no rating at all. There's actually 5 little dots that sit under here, and the 5 little dots sit under here. When you actually rate in Capture One, make sure I'm getting to the right place here. Yeah, if you rating in Capture One, the easiest way to do star ratings is 0 through 5. So for instance, if you hit a 3, you'll get a 3-star rating. If you hit a 5, you'll get a 5-star rating. It'll overwrite the old one. If you hit a 1, you'll get a 1-star rating. If you hit a 0, you will actually get a 0 rating. So that's how most people work in Capture One in terms of actually the initial edits, is they'll go through. How many people in this room think 5 stars is better than 1 star? Does anybody think it's the other way around? My whole first like 2 or 3 years of editing, I always thought 1 star was the best. I don't know why. So I would start with like 5 stars and then go to 3 stars, and then 1 star would be it. And then people would look at my editing and go, what is up with this? You know? So at any rate, I don't do that anymore. I've joined the crowd. So anyway, typically when I edit, what I'll go through is I'll start and I will 1-star anything. Okay, how many people do this? When you edit, do you promote what you like or throw away what you don't like first? You promote what you like, right? Do I have anybody in here who throws away shit to just narrow it down first? That's how my wife edits. It drives me crazy. She goes through and she finds all the shit she doesn't like. And then it's like, okay. And I feel like we're starting all over again when, you know, anyway, however you want to do this, that's fine. So at any rate, I go through and I will 1-star everything that I want to do. And then I'll actually do a sort of this kind of stuff. So to do sorting on ours really quickly, there's a couple of places that we can do it. You've already got some star ratings on this guy. You've only got 5. You've got a couple of ones. Okay, so let's go through and actually just do a couple like this. So let's just add a couple of 1-stars. So just hit a 1-star. If you then use your arrow keys, you can actually shift how you go through. However, arrow keys are tricky, so I need to show you this because this is another one that will actually bite you in the ass. If you click on the little eyeball that's above the browser, look up at my screen to see where I'm talking about, click on this drop-down menu right here. If you change it to this very beginning right here, it will give you more of a contact sheet on the side. So then if you click on this and sort of drag it to the side, you will actually then get rows. You get contact sheet rows like this. This is what will screw people up. If you use your arrow keys to proceed through your images, what happens is that a lot of people would simply hit the down arrow key right now. And if you do that, what you end up seeing is you skip 2 frames. You've just gone down. You are not going through your image one at a time. You're not going here from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 like that. You're now skipping down rows. If you've only got a single row showing, then you don't have a problem. If you want to go, though, through your images, you use the left and right arrows. And when you do that, it will scroll you through everything going left to right, and then it will drop down to the next row when you get there. It goes in the other direction as well. Now, for me, this is never the view that I actually use in this. For me, in the browser view, again, if you click on that little eyeball to get this, I always use the one that's on the far right-hand side. And what this one is just no matter what you do, you will never have more than a single column. That's all you get in this. In this case, it doesn't matter whether you use a right arrow, a left, or a down arrow. They will actually do the same exact thing for you. So that's what I want to do. So go through a couple of these and just give me just 2 or 3 1-stars. It doesn't matter what we actually hit, just so that I've actually got something to begin to work with. So once you do that, if you look at the double set of arrows that are right next to the browser up at the top, right next to that little eyeball that I was showing you, if you click on that, you can see you'll get a drop-down menu. And in this drop-down menu, this is your sort menu. So you can sort your images by their name, by the date that they were shot, by their rating, by their color tagging, by the lens. All of these things you can actually sort your images by. Now, sometimes people will simply click on name, hoping that their naming convention was correct. But you'll see in my case right here, I've actually mixed a bunch of images in here, which really sort of screw this part up. I've also renamed a couple of things in here. If this happens to you for some whatever reason, name does not sort them in the way that you think it actually should, it's usually because something weird has gone on. Your safest bet, if you want to see the progression of your shoot, is to actually change this sorting to date. So date ignores any of your naming conventions, anything that was actually changed. So you'll see in mine that now I go back to having the guy with the color card to begin with, and then he translates once I get the color to the girl, and then she goes down, and it will be her entire shooting before we get anything else mixed up. So a lot of times this will be the easier way to do it as far as that part goes. There is a reverse on this. So if you actually click on that drop-down menu again and you hit date a second time, it will actually do the reverse order of your date. So instead of going from first to last, date-wise, it'll go from last to first. If you click on that drop-down menu again, you will see that there's a check mark next to reverse, and there's also sort of not an underscore, but a dash right next to date. What that's telling you is that this is the date that you actually are sorting by, but it's done in reverse order. You can uncheck the reverse and it will go back, or you can simply click on date again and it will reverse it back out again. Make sense? Okay, there are color taggings that you can actually, oh, the other place, so this is sort right here. This is not the only place that sort exists. Sort actually exists up in the view tab as well. If you come up here to the view menu and you come down to sort, you get that exact same list. While we're here, just so that you know this, and actually change our view here back to the more contact sheet version of it so that you at least get a couple of rows of this. You can actually manually change the sort order of your contact sheet that you were looking at. So for instance, if you grab this very first frame and make it active, you can click and drag and you can move it somewhere else. When you do that, you will see in your sort drop-down menu that this is now automatic. It shifts down to manual. It just does that because it knows that you're actually placing these things sort of out of order. However, this can be a really good tool for people who, some people just want to see, oh, I need to see this image next to that image, next to this image, whatever. This just becomes a good way of actually doing it. Remember when you're doing all of this that you can also come up to the view menu and you could come down and you could say, I want you to hide the viewer, which will give you a much bigger contact sheet right now. And now you really can start moving stuff around that will sort of help you out as far as that part goes, figuring out what's going on in here. When you get into the contact sheet like this, you will notice that you've actually got this slider down here still. It's actually now a browser. It's an adjustment for the size of the images that you actually have in the browser as far as that part goes. So I'm gonna go back up to showing my viewer again. Again, I'm going to change this drop-down menu to giving me the single view on the side. I'm also going to change my sort order back to date so that I get them like this. So now we should have a couple of images in there that have got a couple of 1-stars in there. There was already a couple in there that had a 4-star rating and a couple that had a 5-star rating, which is fine. There's also color tagging, and color tagging happens right here. It's this little square that sits on this drop-down side right here. If you actually click on that color tag right here, you will actually see there is a drop-down menu that comes off of this, and you can do either no color tagging at all, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, pink, or purple. If you come up to the view menu, to the adjustment menu, and you come down to color tag, you will actually see that some of these color tags have shortcuts already. These are keyboard shortcuts for them. So the minus key alone will give a color tagging of red. The yellow is the sort of asterisk, and then the plus key will actually give you a green. The reason these exist like this is that this is all legacy. This goes back to Capture One version 3.7, which existed like 15 years ago. This was something that they only had 3 colors back then, and these were the keyboard shortcuts for that. So for consistency's sake, they've actually kept that part here. However, you can modify keyboard shortcuts in Capture One. And to see what that's like, we're actually going to modify our set. I want you to come over to the Capture One menu, click on the drop down, and you will notice right in the middle here, it says Edit Keyboard Shortcuts. The first time you do this for a photographer or an art director that doesn't know that this exists, you are going to lock your future with working for those people for the rest of your life, because you are going to have showed them a way to do something incredibly simple and easy. So I need everybody to do this with me. So I want you to, again, come up to the Capture One menu, down to the Edit Keyboard Shortcuts. I'll show you where it is again. Up, Edit Keyboard Shortcuts. You will notice that in Edit Keyboard Shortcuts that you have got all the menu items exist right here. If you look, there's a Capture One 9 menu. It exists right here. Then the File menu, the same as here. The Edit menu, same as here. All of these, they're all exactly the same. In our case, we don't want to change the default. We don't want to go back to Capture 3.7, whatever. We simply want to create a new one. So I'm going to click on Create. It's going to say, what is this keyboard set that you want to actually name? And I'm going to call this Verser's Keyboard. I would name yours after you. And say OK. Now that too should be getting saved in our application support folder. So we'll go check and see how that works. However, what we want to change in this is the keyboard command shortcuts that we use for color tagging. So again, color tagging was under the adjustments menu. So if you click on the little triangle that kicks that adjustment menu open, you'll actually see it happens in here. And then if you click on the little drop down triangle next to color tag, you will see that there indeed are these are the color tags that exist. You will also see the keyboard shortcuts that exist for the color tags. You will see that red, yellow, and green are the only ones that actually currently have one right now. However, if you click on the red one and then double click in that area that is next to the keyboard shortcut itself, you can actually change the keyboard shortcut. So in my case, I'm going to try, let me try this really quick. Hang on one second. I'm going to start with none at the first, just because I think that's the best to do. So for none, I am going to click on him first. I am going to hold down the Shift key and hit 0. That's going to be what I'm going to use to remove any color tagging. Then with red, I'm going to click on that. I'm going to hit Shift 1. And then for orange, I'm going to hit Shift 2. And then for yellow, I'm going to do Shift 3. Sorry, 3. If you make a mistake, simply enter it again. Then for green, Shift 4.
If you were to say you hit 1 or something, but one's obviously the one star.
Right.
Is it gonna overwrite it?
No, it won't, and I'll show you that in just a second. We'll show you in the very last one. So I'm going to go to blue will be Shift 5, pink will be Shift 6, and purple. So Jane brings up a great point here. What happens if there's a keyboard shortcut that's already taken? So instead of hitting Shift, hit Command 0. And what you'll see happens is it actually puts in Command 0 for you, but it says, you get this warning down here at the bottom. Command 0 is used by to fit. And if you were to close this up, it will not save that. No, you cannot override a keyboard shortcut. Well, I take that back, Jenny. You can. What you would have to do is you would have to go to the view menu where to fit exists, and you would have to delete Command 0 for that first, and then you could assign Command 0. So you have to free it up before you can actually assign it somewhere else. Make sense?
That's weird. It's letting you do it.
I probably won't save it though. Try it. So if you hit close and come up to your adjustment menu and come down to color tag, it does have it says Command 0. Let's see what happens. We'll hit Command 0. Maybe then it's just a warning telling you that you shouldn't have done that.
Because when you like change it, it shows, oh, it's going, something's already signed to this, but once you click out of that, it automatically overrides the one.
Got it. I think that's a bug in my opinion then. Anyway, but I'm going to go back and re-overwrite that anyway, and I'm going to hit Shift 7 for mine. Okay, while you're in here, this is an important one to know. If you make a mistake, you do not hit the delete key. You hit that little circle with the X in it. And the reason you don't hit the delete key is if you hit the delete key, actually, they've changed all of this. And it doesn't exist now, but in older versions of this, version 8, I know because I have a whole series of customers in here, the delete key gets put in as the keyboard shortcut for purple. So instead of getting rid of whatever you put in there by mistake, the delete key becomes your keyboard control. But this has also been added. This did not exist in there before either, the getting rid of it guy. So I'm going to do Shift 7 for this guy right here. I'm going to close this up. Then up to the adjustment menu down to color tag, and you will see that your color tag ratings are now numbered Shift 1 through 7. And so for an art director to be able to then go through and realize that this part exists, it's so much easier. It's so much better. I watch people try and do these color tags all the time, and these are just a huge pain in the ass right here. So again, I've got this one active. Shift 0 gets rid of my color tag. Shift 1 is red. Shift 3 is green, or Shift 4 is green, whatever. You guys get where this is going. It's just a whole much easier way to actually do this. Okay, are there questions about this guy? We good on this? Okay. So back into the library, if you look on the other side down at the very bottom, you have filters down here. And in the filter system down here, you can see that at the very top, you've got ratings, which give you star ratings. And then you've actually got colors underneath this as well. And then even further down, if you keep going down, you've got things like date are some of these. If you come down, keywords, there's a couple of these. And then there are actually places or other things that exist down here. I'm going to start at the very top, though, and we're actually going to look at the key ratings up here. If you click on any one, you'll see if there's, you can look at your rating over here. On the side to the right of that, we'll show you how many images actually have these ratings. So for instance, in my case, I made 3 one-star ratings. If you click on that 3, it will actually show you those 3. Now, we can't see it right now because our because we're in that single view, and it's actually very small. So I am going to click back to sort of this scale. I'm going to change this back to the more contact sheet version of this so that you can sort of see really what's going on in here. And you can actually see that there's only 3 files that are actually selected right now. If you click on the 4-star rating, you'll see there's only 1 4-star rating. If you click on the 5-star rating, you'll see that there's 2 5-star ratings. So this part is actually pretty straightforward as far as that part goes. If you want to undo this so that you're not looking at any of these ratings at all, you click on this little circle, on the circle with the X in it in the search box. When you click on that, it gets rid of all of your anything sorting that you've actually got going on in here. The red holds true as well. If you click on the red, you'll actually pick up, there's color ratings. If you didn't add or change any of the ones in the file that I gave you, there's 3 of these that are actually marked red stars. If you want to do multiple sortings, you use the option keys. So for instance, let's say that I wanted to see the red star ratings, but I only want, I mean the red flag ones, but only 5-star ratings. If the option key, you can click and you can actually get multiple ratings, and you can see right now I do not have any 5-star red images actually made. To get rid of that, again, click in the little in the search box to get rid of that. I'm going to see what else I do have in here. I'm going to click on the 4-star. I do have 1 red 4-star here again. So if I were to hold down the option key and click on red, it would actually show me that guy as well. If you uncheck again the 4-star rating, you'll see that you have 3 red stars, or 3 being flagged red. Again, holding down the option key and clicking on that one. This is the only file that actually ends up satisfying both of those arrangements. Make sense? Okay, let's do this. Hang on 1 second. Yeah, I want to say let's take a break right now. Let's stop. When we come back, we're going to actually start generating smart albums and stupid albums as well. So, yeah, so we'll take a break. Do me a favor. I've got, it's like 2:53 right now. Make it back here by 5 after 3. It'd be great. Or let's make it 10 after 3. I'll give you time to get coffee. I think you are done with cameras, yes. No, I take that back. Don't. I don't. Maybe not. Hang on to your camera. Yeah.
Are you recording today's session?
Yes. I hope. I'm going to find out right now.
You mentioned before that they're all going to be on YouTube without like this. Have to be added to Google Plus.
Yes.